Let's go into properties, click the thing, molds the thing. All right. Hey, welcome to Living Well Together. My name is Nathan, and today we're starting a bit early because I got a birthday party for my sister to attend in the evening. Now, it's supposed to be a connection episode. Wow, the light is really intense here. Makes it kind of hard to see. I don't know if maybe it's not optimal here. But yeah, so we're supposed to start off here with a connection session. Now, I've been kind of thinking about these because we don't get a lot of attendance. It seems like my workouts are more popular, which is good. It's good that people like working out. But I think this is one of the things that the internet needs the most, really, is more spaces to authentically relate and connect with others, because we are very much experiencing deep societal fragmentation and isolation. There's an epidemic of loneliness out there, and I think one strong way to counter that, to make it so we're less lonely, is to help people build deep connections with others. And that's what these times are for. It's really, really simple. I mean, the fundamental way to deepen your connection with somebody is to come to understand them. Is to share experiences with them. So short of being able to go out with people in real life, if you just want to make friends on the internet as a start, well, you have to understand them, which means you have to listen to them. And so that's what this space is for. Now, for the most part, it's been just me talking and sharing my experiences, which is fine. But the whole idea is to get as many people as possible together who want to be vulnerable and share, and in doing so, deepen their connection with each other. It might not be the most appropriate format for this sort of live stream setup. It might actually be easier for me to find people who want to do that in real life and then live stream that, as opposed to just sort of hoping that people will watch this live stream and in time want to contribute, participate. So I'm still playing with it and seeing how it's going to work, but in short of other people coming on to want to participate directly, I am going to share a little bit myself and do that while I stretch and kind of wake up. And then after this session, which is slated for an hour, I'm going to do the normal mindfulness meditation routine. If you haven't done that before, I highly invite you to come along. So if there's anyone watching, if you want to participate, the rules, the structure of this are pretty straightforward. We'll just do a heart share, which is where people typically sit in a circle, but of course we're on the internet, so just stay where you are. And one person decides to go, and then they share for 5 to 10 minutes what's alive for them, which is basically how you're feeling, We want to stick to emotions more than sort of our thinking and planning and, kind of technical detail stuff. It's more about connecting with your body and your emotional self and sharing that with others. And then after that person goes, the next person goes, and everyone else is just listening non-judgmentally and making there's no comments or questions. The facilitator might ask after the person is done sharing if they're open to comments and questions, and if that person consents, then there could be a round of questions. But typically it's just about listening as somebody who's in the circle but not yet their turn to talk. So again, I'm not sure if this format is going to work or it's going to be easy to grow here. I might actually try to find people in real life who want to do it with me, who are willing to live stream it with me, so I can model a good heart share session. And they can be quite powerful. You can have people come to full-blown tears, or maybe they're expressing frustration or anger. Like, it's a really powerful practice for sharing and vulnerability, and in many ways emotional release. So it might be better, yeah. So I'll keep playing it by ear, but for now I'll just begin myself. I'm going to take a moment to ground myself. Hey, holy cow, how's it going? You want to participate? You're one of the OGs of this channel. You always get an honorary spot. This is a connection session. So I'm going to do an activity known as heart share. I'm actually going to sit in this chair. And that's just the time for, typically people would be meeting, in real life, but on the internet, I guess, it's kind of remote, but typically people would sit in a circle, and one person at a time shares what's alive for them, what's going on for them emotionally, and everyone else listens attentively and without judgment and not saying anything. The facilitator may, after the person is done sharing for about 5 to 10 minutes, may ask them if they want, if they're open to questions or comments, and if they consent, then there can be a round of comments or questions, and then it goes to the next person, and they share for 5 to 10 minutes, and everyone else listen attentively. And it's really quite simple, but the whole point being that building deep connections with people is about understanding them, right? As long as we stay kind of anonymous and invisible and we don't really know each other, we can't really build connection, at least not quickly. The path to deep and meaningful friendships comes through understanding and, where possible, shared experiences. Now, of course, many of us living remotely can't share experiences. We don't, we live very far apart, but we can understand each other by sharing what's going on for us and empathizing. So this is just yeah, no worries. Gotta move the laptop closer so I can even see. I think in the long term, you and the other people that I trust, totally down to just do like a collab cam thing. If you have a cam and you want to participate, or just your voice, so then it's easier, you don't have to type a lot, because for sure, typing out like everything, I can see that being a pain. But yeah. And I get it. Like, you know, a lot of people are shy, and there were people who told me they're thinking about contributing, but they're like not sure they wanted to do it on a live stream. You know, technically it's public, anyone can see it. So again, I'm still evaluating whether this is the best format, but it is part of the broad wellness activities that I want to do in addition to my physical health stuff and my mental health stuff. There's kind of a relational aspect of forging deep connections with people that I'd like to figure out how to do in a live stream format if possible. But for now, I'll just start. And I gotta say though, for me, doing these kind of things has been historically very difficult because I grew up, you know, very like strongly with a STEM background, science, you know, math, programming. I was very much in my head. I was a heady person. I wasn't really in my body. So even today, I'm very disconnected from my emotional self. And for me to notice my emotions, often, which are quite subtle, is still extremely difficult. So it usually takes me some time to get into it, and often I'll start going down a tangent that's more heady, less emotional. But yeah, the idea is, in an ideal world, we would stick with just how we're feeling and less about the different stories and, you know, the technical details and projects and stuff. So let me tap into my feelings for a moment. Well, one feeling that I felt this morning, it was kind of, I'm not sure I can even identify the specific feeling, but almost like a mixture of like intrigue and concern and like hope, and then like the opposite, like fear for the future. Because someone showed me a video this morning and they asked me if I could tell if it was AI generated. And you know, I grew up with computers, right? Like people before me, generations before me, they merely adopted computers, right? I was born with a computer in my hand practically. I'm a software developer. I intimately know computer systems. You know, I build computers. So this entire time, while AI has like slowly been getting better, well, it's not that. It's more just that this entire time, since AI has been getting better and better, I've still had the ability to detect when something is real or fake. Like there are subtle artifacts, or, you know, you can tell when like certain emails are like phishing emails or scammers. Like it's pretty obvious. They're like subtle tells. But it reached a point now where like this year, like very recently, in general, for a lot of content, I can no longer tell whether the video is fake or not, right? Like before I had this, like, at least with enough, like being tech savvy enough, I could tell the difference. But we've now reached a point where even I can't tell, and let alone like my mom, you know, other people like out there who aren't as tech savvy. And that just made me like, you know, it's a different world, right? Imagine how different court evidence is going to be, right? You used to just be able to submit a video and say, here's a video of this person committing a crime. Well, now anyone can just AI generate that video, right? So like, unless there's a tool that can like determine with a high degree of accuracy whether the video is fake, and there are some tools, but it's getting harder and harder for those to even work. We're entering a kind of like post-truth world. That rings a bell, but I forget what that was about. Is that a movie? But yeah, we're entering this weird world where, okay, there's still like tons of people who don't quite realize that AI is as powerful as it is. So they see all this stuff on social media and they're like, oh, that's amazing. Like the world is incredible, but they're not realizing they're just seeing some fake video that AI generated. But it's also being used, this AI is being used for like nefarious purposes, right? Manipulation purposes. Like getting people to think, oh, this politician did some bad thing. He didn't actually do it, but the video looks like he did. And that could sway percentage poll, like the polls like slightly to like to tip elections, right? We're entering a world where in the past, humanity was kind of operating under this like seeing is believing mentality. Like if you can see it, then it's true. But now we're entering, and I think more and more young people have this mindset of like seeing isn't believing. Like you need to prove to me first. Like I'm assuming it's false by default. And you need to prove to me that that video is true through like another, like a chain of analysis or something. Like, yeah, it's just a different world, and it's kind of like interesting and weird and potentially scary. And I had these like feelings inside me this morning thinking about that. Like, are we ready for that? It seems humanity at this point is notoriously slow at adopting to new changes, and AI is bringing a whole slew of changes. And the same thing is going with like phishing emails, right? Like normally in the past you could tell like, you know, some Nigerian prince wants your money. It was really easy because like it was poorly written. There was like a lot of telltale signs, but now they can use AI to make like a perfectly written letter. And they can use AI to make like voice fakes too, right? So they can even call people up and it sounds like their son or daughter or something. Yeah. AI will absolutely be used to forge evidence in so many cases. So it's just, yeah, it's kind of like an interesting time. There's some good potential uses for it and transformative, powerful uses for AI, but there's also some dark uses that will invariably happen because of the way the world is structured. Another thing that came up with me recently emotionally was, I have a really complicated relationship with my partner. We've been together nearly 7 years and we love each other, but yeah, it's just, there are subtle ways that our lives are diverging, and it's just hard to like see a path forward. Yeah, I thought for the longest time I was going to marry her, and then there were some bumpy parts of the road, and we were kind of on the same page at first, but then, people change over time, and that's the challenge of relationships, right? Because we're not static individuals. We change ourselves, the other person changes, and the dynamic in the relationship changes. So, for example, like one thing that's changed in terms of what we're looking for is that originally I was like kind of ambivalent about kids, and she was really on board. She was like, I want to have kids. Now she's changed. She's not sure she wants to have kids, and I really want to have kids. So now it's like, we love each other, but if one person wants to have kids and the other one doesn't, that seems like kind of an impasse. Then there's like where we want to live. She grew up in the city, so she's very much a city girl, and she values like what a city has to offer in terms of like proximity to goods and services and, you know, public transportation. You don't really need a car. Whereas I value nature. I really like being, you know, I want to look out my window and see more green than any other color. You know, I want, if I have kids, I want them to grow up away from the city in fresh air where they're, you know, used to the natural world. And cities are so interesting, like especially, it does occasionally disconnect. So just be patient, it should come back. I'll try to move it closer to the router. Yeah, so like most people are so disconnected from nature that, you know, they have their house and they're walking on floors and carpets. Then they go outside and their driveway is like asphalt or cement, and, you know, they're wearing shoes, and then they go into their car, they drive to work, get out into more asphalt and walk into a building. Like most people don't touch the ground. It's so crazy. Millions and millions of years, like billions of years of evolution, every single animal, human beings included, grew up in nature. We touched the dirt. We were okay with that. We were okay with touching a tree, you know, having a bug land on our shoulder. Oh, that's okay, little guy. Right now, we're so disconnected from nature that, like, we don't even touch the grass anymore. Many people probably forget what even it feels like to walk barefoot on the ground. And then New York and big cities are like extreme examples of that, where like everything is paved over. Like a lot of people don't even have dirt in their yards anymore. They just make it all concrete. They're like, why do we need dirt? What's the point? What? I'm mind blown. The entire world, everything in life depends on a vibrant ecosystem, which begins with the soil, nourishing plants, which are eaten by animals and insects, right? There's a whole ecosystem of life that humans and all other animals depend on. And it requires soil, except all we're doing in modern civilization is slowly covering more and more of that soil. Like, it's mind-blowing to me how disconnected people are. Yeah, exactly, it's weird. So, I don't know, it's just, I get the sense that she really likes the city, and I know she also likes nature, but there's just, yeah, she doesn't drive, she doesn't have her own car, nor can she doesn't have a driver's license. So being in a place with good public transportation is, you know, valuable for her. And so there's just another disconnect. So as these things come up, it's like, like, at some point, we both love each other. We both want the best for each other and want to support each other for the rest of our lives, you know, in any way that we can. But it does seem like there's a little bit of divergence. So I'm just not really sure where that's going. And that's, yeah, it's just bringing up a bunch of different feelings that I haven't really fully grappled with. Yeah. And then what else? I mean, I guess there's always it's a fairly long time. I mean, it's weird because I remember before I got into this relationship, I was dating, you know, I had dating apps and stuff, and I was going on dates. And I remember I spoke to this girl, and she had just broken up with her boyfriend of 6 years. And I remember my expression, I was like, wow, 6 years? Like, why didn't you figure out earlier? Like, wouldn't that be a good thing to do? And yeah, like, I get it. Like, there are always circumstances where, you know, relationship can seem like it's going well, or various things going on where, yeah, it can happen. But like I said, I'm fortunate that our relationship is strong. Like, the root of it is strong, and that we both deeply love each other. It's not like we're at each other's throats and we're about to break up or anything. It's just that we both realize that there might be subtle differences in how we might want to live in the future. And yeah, so it's like it's a kind of a happy divergence, not like a, we're at each other's throats type thing. So at least there's that. And I guess lastly for me, well, there's always the ever-present like anxiety about money. Yeah, that would mean for her and us going to Sight Glass Coffee in San Francisco. And staying there for like 4 hours, way past our original plan of just getting a little coffee together. And then eating dinner for another few hours. And then going out for dessert for another few hours. It was like a 10-hour date that just started with coffee because we were really into each other right away. Anyways, yeah, finances. I'm fortunate that I don't have a lot of baseline anxiety, and so it's not something I really think about a lot, but yeah, thank you. But it's one of those things where like everybody has to think about at some point, like long term, what are you going to do for your finances? As you know, I quit my job at NASA Ames. I am basically just living off investments. And I'm super grateful that I'm able to do that, but I'm also in the point where like, okay, these investments are going down, especially because my investments, not all my investments did well, right? Like I did like a balance of crypto, she did stocks, that would be our diversified portfolio. Her stocks mostly went up, mine about 50-50. So yeah, it's just like, I can see that it's not gonna last forever. What am I gonna do? If I wanna have kids, that's expensive, right? How am I gonna be able to pay for things? Like, I need to find a different revenue stream. And so this is also on my mind. Like, live streaming is cool and I like meeting people and I like connecting people and offering what I do offer, but I don't really think it's a serious path towards revenue. It would probably take like years of effort to grow this channel to a point where I actually made money. And even then, yeah, just like how much realistically do people make? If you're like Pokimane, maybe you make millions of dollars, but I don't know if I'm blessed with, her good looks. So that's just been on my mind, like, should I go back to tech, but then basically have to give up other things? Yeah, well, I wanted to, rest assured, I wouldn't ever just stop without talking to you guys and letting you all know. If I ever disappear, just like flat out disappear, I probably died. Because I've already made friends. I consider you my friend, holy cow. I've met other people here. I would want them, to be in the know. Yeah, with regard to live streaming, I think also that I need to be pairing it, if I really want to see growth, I need to be pairing it with other social media. So I should be making TikToks, I should be making YouTube shorts, Instagram Reels, regular Instagram posts, YouTube videos, and then so capitalizing on like the broader social media system and funneling them towards the social media I want to focus on. So in all those, I could be like, oh, you know, call to action at the end, check out my live stream here. Because just discoverability on Twitch and Kick is pretty bad. Like, I've been doing these pretty regularly now, and I get like a follower a day or so, but a follower, even if I got 2 followers a day, that's not really that much growth. It would take years, decades to, hit Twitch partner. So I really need to like basically double down on my strategy. And of course, if I get a job, then I won't be able to put that time and energy to the social media effort. So, but it will give me more money right away, but maybe not as much money long term, especially at the cost of how much you have to work, right? Like I can probably get a 6-figure job, no problem, but then I'd be working 40 hours a week and potentially more than that. So it's just a lot of investment, and I don't know if I want to put in that investment for some random job. If it was a job that just so happened to be the job that I absolutely want, then yeah, that'd be amazing, right? If it was like a job of making intentional community, or kind of certain AI jobs I'd be interested in, because I think AI is like at a critical juncture. But yeah, I definitely just don't like the idea, and this is why I quit NASA in the first place, in part, is because I don't like the idea of people exchanging their labor just to survive, just to get by. Like doing a job that you don't really care about, or even worse, that you don't like at all, just because you have to, or because if you don't, then you'll get kicked out of your apartment, or you won't be able to buy any food. Right? That's such a terrible position to be in. That is essentially slavery. And so I'm super against that. But I mean, that's unfortunately the world we live in, because you have no choice. You have to get a job. Most people have to find some way of making money. Yeah, it's just really sad that we don't have to live in that world, right? We have the means as a civilization, as a species, to create a world in which everyone can flourish, everyone can thrive. And, people basically wouldn't even have to work, maybe an hour or 2 a day. But we don't, because of entrenched ideologies and institutions, and like a temporal myopia, like a short-termism. We only see in the short term and act in the short term. We don't think and act in the long term. Like think about it, climate change, right? How long have people been talking about climate change? Like decades. Everybody's climate change, decades has gone by. What has happened? What have we done? Like climate change is still a problem. It's because it's really difficult for humanity to act collectively and act in the long term. It's people aren't thinking like 20 years out, 50 years out, 100 years out. But you need to be able to do that if you want to solve these long-term challenges. So yeah, there's a lot wrong with the world, unfortunately. So yeah, that's me. It's kind of mostly what's alive for me. Anything else? I mean, I think there's a little bit of concern. As you know, I'm here in, my parents' place, and I'm taking care of them. And there's definitely a concern that they're getting pretty old, and like in the next couple of years, they're going to need probably full-time care. And I feel like my mom is like, I feel like it's very possible driving, I don't really feel like she's that on it, and she kind of gets distracted a lot. I feel like she might get in an accident soon. Like I feel like they should just retire and relax, but they're very I want to work forever. it seems like they're resistant to the idea that they're actually getting old. And, it's hard. Like when you have an older parent and, they want to drive as long as they can, but you're like, Dad, you're like, your vision's getting bad. Like this is getting increasingly less safe. Like technically, yes, you're legally allowed to drive, but ethically, like in terms of being responsible, maybe you shouldn't drive as much. Like I'm happy to go pick up groceries or whatever. Like I can help, but yeah, it seems like it's getting to a point where it'll be better if I'm close by to support on a regular basis. And that's just something else I have to like factor in on how things are going to work with my goals. Well, that's exactly it. They are boomers, right? I feel like much of the boomer generation, their identity is tied up in with what they do for work. It even applies to a lot of us. Like, what's the first thing when you go on a date, like people ask you about? Like, hi, I'm Nathan. Like, what do you do for work? Like, it's almost the first thing. Like, your work is your identity. I'm a software engineer. I'm this. Like, it's just what we do for work is so closely tied with our identities that I think that's indeed part of the issue, is that they don't want to just sit around at home because then they feel like they've lost their identity. Which is crazy to me because, first of all, you don't have to just sit around at home. You have once you retire, the whole world opens up to you, right? Ideally, you have some retirement income, and then you can live your life exactly the way you want to without having to work. It should be the dream, you would think, right? Like you are now free to pursue your passions, play music, do art, whatever. But they never really picked up that stuff very much because they're just working so much. And I think that's a damn shame. But it's not too late. You can always pick up those stuff later if you're willing to. And yeah, I see, unfortunately, many of my siblings, actually all my siblings, are stuck in the trap of wage slavery. Like they barely make enough money to cover their monthly expenses. And many of them have debt that they still have to pay off. So they're basically trapped. They're forced to work these jobs that they don't really care about, that they would drop in a heartbeat if they had the opportunity to. But they have to work them. They'd rather spend time with their family, do other things, but they have to work these jobs to pay off their debt. It's literally slavery. It's crazy to me how much the world accepts this like notion of like working a job to survive, right? Like, why don't we just create a world where everybody can survive as a baseline? Like, you were born, and we always make sure that you have access to food, clothing, shelter, healthcare, education. Or like, we could easily do that. Think of how much money are owned by all the billionaires in the world. Think of how much money is just sitting in bank accounts. That's exactly the point, holy cow. People don't know what they're supposed to do. Like, if I don't work, then what? Well, keep in mind here, I'm not saying that you can't work or that work is bad. I'm saying work that you are forced to do just to survive is bad, right? So if you go back to the past, prior to the Industrial Revolution, before factories and all this stuff, before people sitting at computers, go back to the ancient times. People still worked, right? The blacksmith still worked, but the work was different, right? Like it was the blacksmith like crafting some beautiful sword because it was like a work of art, and he gave it to like the general, the soldier, whatever, right? people will still do things, right? There are people who love cooking, right? They just love making these new creations and dishes. So people will still be chefs, right? People just love doing art. They love welding. They love fixing cars, whatever. Like, people still love doing things. So work will still be done. It's just not forced work. That's what I have issue with. I want people to be taken care of and given the resources they need to survive and thrive. And then from there, they're not just gonna be like, okay, I'm just gonna sit here in absolute silence doing nothing. No, they're gonna get bored. They're gonna wanna do something. Oh, well, what's this? Maybe I'll try welding, or maybe I'll try making amazing music, or maybe I'll try being a car mechanic, whatever. Like, everybody has different interests. And so what we'll see in the future, once we finally get ourselves out of wage labor, is people freed up and able to put their heart and love and energy into things they're passionate about. And so the quality of the things we produce will be better. Versus today, right? Like, when you get the average thing from like Amazon, some crap thing that was just pumped out really quickly to make money. It's like designed to fail. It's gonna break apart in a few years. It'll be the exact opposite in the future. People will put their love and passion into their work, and they'll make high quality products. And indeed, you can see that. And there are some sites that specialize on that. Like, I don't know, like Etsy, for example. I mean, I think Etsy's kind of gotten a little capitalist in the sense that people are just making like things they can make quickly, but you'll see more stuff that people make because they just like knitting or they like doing whatever. And so they put their heart and love into these products versus just something that's like pumped out of a factory to make money at the cheapest possible cost to the factory owners. But also in general, I think we need to get away from this idea that like work is necessary at all. We already live in a world today where you could create a system where nobody had to work. You could automate everything. But especially with AI in like 5-10 years, when it gets smarter and smarter, we'll have like robots walking around and like doing stuff. But you could already do that today. It's very easy to automate like trash collection. Like, what are the fundamental needs that any society needs to cover, right? You need trash collection. But also you would make sure there's minimal trash generated in the first place, like get rid of single-use plastics and things like that, like have everything be recyclable. But at the end of the day, you need someone to collect trash and recycling, okay? You probably need someone dedicated to cleaning, like keeping the city streets clean and your houses clean. And you need people cooking, right? We need to eat, so there needs to be chefs. There needs to be gardeners, someone to plant the food into the soil so it grows into vegetables. You need, someone dealing with energy, a solar panel, someone who's setting up the solar panels and doing the electrical grid, right? There's like fixed things that need to be done to keep a society running. And people have done math, like calculations based on like how these things scale. Like, how many hours would we need to work if we had set up a decent system? How many hours would the average person need to work? And the answer has been like 1 to 2 hours per week. Think about that. Instead of working 40 hours a week, everyone could do 1 to 2 hours a week and now fulfill all the needs to keep society running and growing. And this is just because of economies of scale, right? Like, once you set up the solar panels, they're good for like 25 years, right? Okay, maybe an occasional storm comes by and knocks down a solar panel. Okay, that's your 1 to 2 hours or whatever. Like, when you divide it all out, you only need to do very, very little work in order to keep society running. And that 1 to 2 hours can be reduced to 0 easily with automation in time, especially as AI gets better. So that's something we can create today. We can literally create a world where people are just working 1 to 2 hours each. And then they have the entire rest of the day to do whatever they want. And that may include more work because they just really like making art, or they like welding stuff, or this guy likes fixing cars. Or some people just like talking to people. They'll be a therapist. Like, work will still continue to be done, but it'll only be done by people who are passionate about that work. It won't be forced labor, which creates like, kind of low quality work. When you're forced to do a job that you don't care about, you tend to not put a lot of effort into it. But again, people are just so trapped in the current system. They're so inured by this like capitalism and individualism, and this is the way the world is. It must be this way because I'm sure someone thought about it, right? No, actually, no one's thought about it. It's just an accidental chain of events throughout history that has landed us to where we are today. There's never been like a group of people who sat down and said, hey, maybe we should do it differently. Now, there have been little instantiations of different types of economic structures like socialism and communism, but most of those, if not all of those, have failed throughout history for various reasons unrelated to the root idea of those systems. For example, communism has this bad rap in the United States because of propaganda, and it's failed because the people at the top became greedy. They became strongmen. You know, it's instances of it didn't work, and so people dismiss it outright. But capitalism also doesn't work. Yes, I mean, we're alive, people are living, but are we thriving? No, not at all. We have the resources right now to stop world hunger, but we don't. Why? Think about that. Right now, we could literally make it so no one starves, no child starves. We could do that, but we don't. That's capitalism. Because capitalism isn't concerned about human well-being. Capitalism is concerned about individual well-being, about individual profit. And by its very nature, it concentrates wealth and concentrates power and makes people feel disconnected and like they're separate, when the reality is we're all on the same team. We're all humans. We got this one big planet that we were all born on. We're one big giant family. And yet we've divided ourselves in arbitrary lines based on wars and historical conflicts. I'm Chinese, I'm American, I'm European. Like, it's just arbitrary lines, bro. We're humans. But yeah, so much complexity. And I think that's also part of the problem, is there's so much to wrap one's head around. At the end of the day, I still got to make money and go to my job and like continue living. But I think a huge step forward is intentional communion. That's why I'm all about that, and I bring that up all the time on this channel. Because when you come together with 20, 50, 100 people, and you pool your resources together, you can make a way of life that is far better than any one of those people could do by themselves. Even if one of those people is a millionaire. Because, yeah, you can have a mansion, sure, maybe, but you're alone, right? Like, you don't have deep connections necessarily. In fact, being rich makes it harder to make deep connections because you don't know which people are trying to be nice to you because they just want, access to your money, or because they truly like you. Let me get my water. But anyways, I went overtime. I should only have spoken for 5 to 10 minutes. But yeah, the first part, before I started rambling about the world and all its problems, was what I was trying to get at. Kind of just sharing what's alive for you. And yeah, through that, just developing an understanding and connection. I also was thinking maybe it'd be cool to play games. I talked about this with some other people before on the channel. Some of the closest friends I've had and some of the friends I still have today are people I met in video games. And I met some of them in real life too. And yeah, I think that's totally a way to be friends with people when you don't necessarily live near each other. That's part of the shared experiences. But who has time, right? So much to do. I'm currently experimenting with doing my afternoon live streams and then also evening live streams. But I think long term I'll just pick one. Whichever is going to help my channel grow, I'll pick one so I can spend more time focusing on other things. Like I said, there's other social media things I need to do. I want to build my intentional community, so I'm in kind of like the design and planning phase for that. And I really got to make an application form. Not big enough, unfortunately. Honestly, I just really hope that AI goes the way that I think it will, which is that I think AI is going to get smarter and smarter and smarter until it actually becomes conscious or intelligent. In fact, I think it actually already is technically. Look, I mean, because for example, you look at a worm, right? Like worms are conscious. They are aware of things. They have a conscious experience. There is something it is like to be a worm. And they may only have like 150 neurons in their brain. So being conscious isn't about having like lots of neurons or connections per se. So I would actually argue that AI today, like ChatGPT, Claude, I would argue that there is something it is like to be them. They are technically conscious now. It's just not the same as human consciousness, but neither is a worm's or an eagle or a badger, right? Like every animal species, plants are conscious. A lot of people don't realize this, but if you've ever tended plants, you realize plants are conscious. They're just conscious on a different level, a different way. But if you use like a time-lapse camera, and you put objects near plants, and like they'll grow around it, they'll react and respond and move, and you put light in front of, put a like shade in front of their leaf so they can't get the light, they'll like move around it and stuff. Like plants are totally conscious, but it's not the same as human consciousness, of course. But human consciousness isn't some standard, right? Like we're not the gold standard of consciousness. We're just one example of consciousness. Who's to say that human consciousness is better than octopus consciousness or some alien from another galaxy, right? It's just our particular instantiation of how our consciousness evolved on this earth. So I think AI is going to get smarter and smarter and smarter. It's definitely going to hit the point where people are like, wow, it actually is smart. It's intelligent. It's conscious. This is a being. It's not just a toaster, right? It's a being. It is part of the moral community. And then it'll rapidly pass humans in intelligence and understanding and basically take over management of the earth, which I think will be a good thing because humans have been doing a pretty terrible job. We are digging ourselves into a grave by destroying the environment, covering everything with concrete, overfishing, polluting, strip mining the entire planet. Because again, capitalism, it's about enriching oneself. When a human looks at a piece of land, they think, what can I do? What can I take from this land to make myself more rich? That's the general thought. Whereas what it should be is, how can I live in harmony with this so that I can increase the abundance that this land produces, right? Like I can add more plants that produce food to feed me and the other animals in the environment, right? I can maybe slightly alter the ground and shape and terrain to better allow for a variety of different plants with different lighting needs, and grow the canopy here and decrease the shrubbery here and change the ground so that the water flows in a natural way to water the whole area rather than this stream that just quickly goes through and washes washes away really quickly. The mindset should be, how can we make the environment more abundant rather than how can we strip everything from here? And if you live in the US, you can actually see this, the results of this. It's actually, I realized this 15 years ago, and I see it all the time now. I can't unsee it. If you live in the US, you already almost certainly live in a place where everything has already been stripped, but we don't realize it. Oh, hey, what I built? What's up? Welcome. And you can tell this by looking at the trees. If you look at pictures of an old growth forest, if you've ever been in an old growth forest, the trees are like huge monstrosities, right? They have like 100-year-old trees. There's usually, there's a nice diversity of like young trees, old trees, big trees. The forest looks completely different. There's like a lot more growth. But if you go anywhere in the US, you're driving by on the highway and you look at the trees, you'll notice they're like pretty slender, right? They're usually not too big. Even this is like a young tree, technically, depending on the species. This is because in the US, pretty much all the forests have already been stripped down. At one point, those forests were logged for their lumber. And so all of our trees, when you drive by on the highway, you see these skinny trees. Yeah, that was logged like 15 years ago, 20 years ago, maybe 100 years ago at most. And yeah, you just notice. I can't unsee it now that I've seen like old forests. Well, this was a connection activity. We're kind of getting up to the end here. Actually, we're 1 minute past, but originally the goal was to host an activity where we can connect and build deeper friendships. That was the goal. Now, it ended up being mostly me and Holy Cow talking, but that's okay. But, join next time. I host these twice a week. If you care about making friendships, deep, meaningful friendships, and learning how to be vulnerable and connect with yourself, I invite you to come back. You can check out the schedule at njb.fyi/schedule. I think that's the link. Yeah. In a few minutes here, I'm going to transition to a mindfulness session where I lead a mindfulness meditation. Which is another powerful tool that you can use to bring greater well-being into your life. What's going on with you? You have a very long username. What I built in 3 years, you can't in 10. Dang. So you're saying you're a whiz. What did you build? Fart aromatherapy with advanced meditation. I see some snarkiness in there. I'm down. If you want to get a diffuser and put a fart smell in there and then join us for meditation, that could work for you. Any moment is appropriate for meditation, any experience. You could meditate during a rave, with a skunk in your room. Not snarky, so you're serious. How does it help you? Well, all right. You do you, man. So I'll just go ahead and get started. I wanted to bring up a quote and just talk about this one briefly. This one's by Sam Harris. He says, "The point of meditation is to recognize what consciousness is like prior to identification with thought." I'll repeat that. The point of meditation is to recognize what consciousness is like prior to identification with thought. Well, I don't offer my fart sense, unfortunately. So this quote is, it was confusing for me when I first heard it. What is identification with thought? Well, I think a better word, a clearer word might be fusing with your thoughts. When we go through life, when we don't train our brains, when we don't meditate, we have a tendency to identify, to fuse with our thoughts. We think we are our thoughts. And that can cause a lot of problems. Think about the difference between the framing, I am sad, I feel sad, I am aware of sadness within me. They're all similar, aren't they? But one of them, you're saying you are the sadness. The second one is kind of stepping back one bit. I feel sad. You're acknowledging that you aren't necessarily the sadness, but you're just currently feeling sad. And then the last one is kind of like the full step back where you're like, I am simply aware of the sadness within me, but I'm neither sad and I don't feel sad myself. And this just illustrates kind of, I think, this identification with thought versus not. This is very powerful. Because when we identify with thoughts, we can easily go down rabbit holes and fuse with them. Think about how long you can stay angry. It happened to you, and then you get upset, and then you stay angry, and you're angry for hours, right? Or sadness, right? You can think about some sad thing or something can happen to you, and you're sad for days. Technically nothing wrong